Welcome to Piero's Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're here for another Monday mini-sode.
Yeah, Monday minis are our shorter episodes that are just on YouTube. So if you're watching this, it's going to be on YouTube. But if you like this kind of content and you want it longer form, if you're like, hey, I need something while I'm listing on eBay, I need something when I'm driving and sourcing, we've got hour-plus episodes every Wednesday that you can find on YouTube or anywhere that you get your podcasts, and they go into more depth. But our Monday minis, we focus in on one topic for a shorter period of time. So what are we talking about today, Orlando?
So this is an interesting one. I'm interested where this is going to go in the short time that we have. But how to source when sales aren't coming in, right? Because part of reselling is sales have to come in so you can make money, so you can source more. But what if that money isn't coming in and then you still need a source? What do you do? Right. And so a lot of people had been talking about this in the Discord, and also, in comments on social media. People have been DMing me saying, Orlando, what do I do? Here's the thing. You can't stop sourcing, right? That's something that you need to keep sourcing because you need to keep listing, right? So the first thing is, I would say you need to be super selective. And I've said this before, where we had a bull run, I think, of reselling from, 2020 through 2021. And now we're in a place where you have to really make sure you check sell through, make sure that, your item is something that is at a cost that's going to be profitable to you, that you're not tying up your money. You have to make sure it's something that is constantly selling, and not just sell through right in the last 90 days, but something that has consistent sales all the time. And you got to be selective. You got to be way more selective. Gone are the days where you can just go and buy a bunch of stuff and go, I'm pretty sure all of it's eventually going to sell. You can't have that conversation anymore, especially if sales aren't coming through. You have to be super selective on what you're sourcing, because it has to be items that will sell.
Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons to be selective. And even when things are really good, being selective is obviously the best. But yeah, when you're in a bull run thing where pretty much anything will sell, you can kind of just throw wet noodles at the wall and see what sticks. It's kind of
what sells.
And so, but now's the time to be a little bit more selective. And the next one is, and this one is maybe going to be a gut punch for some of us, but maybe you don't need to source outside of your own home. And I don't mean just selling things that are personal things, but I mean, you probably have some death piles. If you're like, I've only met a handful of resellers or talked to a handful of resellers who at least claim that when they go to garage sales and thrift stores, that everything is listed within the week or even that day, and they don't have death piles. And if that's you, I mean, that's the ideal situation. That's what you want to do if you can. However, most of us have things that we've sourced. Maybe you had a big haul, you picked up 40 items at the garage sales over the weekend, and then you only listed like the top 10 most profitable, easy to list things. And then the next weekend you go out and you do it again. And so you end up having items that are unlisted. And what's actually happening is you're losing money over time, because if you can get $30 for it today, but 2 years from now, you still can only get $30 for that item and you haven't listed it, you're losing money because of inflation. You're losing money because money costs more, or is more valuable today than it will be tomorrow. And that's always been the case. Then you want to just get that stuff listed. So source your own inventory. I know Orlando's talked about that's kind of a goal he's got right now, is to go through his death files. And it is a bit of a gut punch to realize, you know what? I'm just going to pretend that what I sourced today was this tote I have sitting here of items that I have not listed. So it's not exactly sourcing, but you can kind of source your own death files and get those things listed. And until you have nothing to list, maybe don't go out. If things are really slow, because you might have profit sitting there that might trigger some sales to come in, and then you can be kind of back into the swing of things.
Yeah, agreed. Now, you need to negotiate the lowest cost possible. And if you haven't caught our recent podcast about negotiating at garage sales, which actually, no, that's dropping.
It's coming up.
It's coming up.
So if you
haven't listened to it, Wednesdays, that makes sense. But catch our upcoming episode, and actually catch our latest. No, even before that, we had a mini-sode. It was about questions you should ask. But you want to negotiate as low as possible, because again, you don't want to have your money tied up. And if you don't have money coming in, you got to get the best price on things. So you got to make sure you negotiate the lowest cost. I would always say, go to garage sales, go to bins, go to where those avenues are. And that's kind of the next thing I want to talk about is make sure you're sourcing at the cheapest avenues, right? Don't go, oh, sales aren't coming in, I'm going to go do some retail arbitrage. Like that's probably a bad call, right? Because retail arbitrage, you're spending a lot of money on stuff. And unless you know it's going to sell right away, unless you're doing stuff like on Amazon and you have a ranking and you know things are going to sell. And even then it's dangerous because there may be a race to the bottom. You may deal with returns. You may get gated after being ungated. So you got to be really careful. And so I would say make sure, you're going to the bins, make sure you're going on Whatnot because there's a lot of low cost items that you can buy to resell if you know what you're looking at. Make sure, you're going to garage sales, go to rummage sales, go to the cheapest places and then negotiate the lowest cost.
Yeah. And on top of that idea of going to the cheapest places, just to kind of expand on that a little bit more, is there may be a place where you go to. I know there was one place, like a warehouse you'd go to, and you're able to get some pretty good stuff. But the prices weren't necessarily the cheapest, but you can get high end stuff, and potentially, your profit would be pretty good. But maybe some of that was long tail items. When you're in a place where you've got to get items to sell, you need the inventory so you can get some capital again. Maybe you're like, I hate doing Craigslist. I hate doing OfferUp because it's extra time, it's extra steps. But maybe that's where you got to do, or you got to go to that thrift store where it's like this thrift store is kind of like a junk hole. There's just mostly junk in here, but they're really cheap. But I got to dig through stuff because you got several resources available to you. You've got money, your capital, you've got your time, you've got your space, you've got your knowledge. There's certain things you have. And so if you're limited on one of those, you're going to have to capitalize on another. And so maybe you're really low on capital. And so you've got to go to a place where you spend more time. You spend more time digging through the bins. You spend more time digging through stuff or just scanning through Craigslist. But if you don't have the sales or you don't have the money to go and say, yeah, I'm going to go to the expensive thrift store that has better stuff, you got to go to the cheaper place and spend the time. So you're converting time into potentially money because you don't have the money to convert into, more free time.
Yeah. And this last one, I put this last because this is the most difficult one to do, is make sure that you have a free alert set up, right? So there's apps out there that you can actually use that will basically aggregate information from Craigslist and Nextdoor and Facebook Marketplace and so on. I can't remember the name of it now. Let us know in the comments if you remember what it is, but it alerts you when stuff comes up for free. Now, it's a tough one because everybody's looking for those. All right. So you got to be quick about it, but try to find ways, to get those free items, right? Some of them, like I said, maybe items within your own house in a death pile or so on. But, if you're constantly combing through Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp, Nextdoor, all these different apps, you're bound to find profitable items. The key thing is in all of this, whether, you're being selective, you're sourcing your own death pile, you're getting things at the lowest cost at the cheapest avenue, is you can't stop sourcing. I would say once you're done sourcing and you're not listing anymore, your sales will dip, right? So obviously you got to do the, end items and sell similar on eBay, but you always got to find ways to source because that's how they keep the business going. And that's the reason why a lot of people after a while just stop reselling because they realize it's not passive income, it's active.
It's a grind.
But it is a grind. You need to keep sourcing and you need to keep listing. So hopefully this mini-sode helped you to source when sales aren't coming in. Yeah. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Peace.